A petition to help independent music professionals secure exemptions under Assembly Bill 5 is getting an overwhelming amount of support online. AB 5 changes the legal classification of independent contractors into employees, causing a lot of issues. About a month ago, we spoke with a group of musicians about the petition, and since then it has grown from 32,000 signatures to almost 170,000. Adrian Duncan and Ari Herstead join us now again to talk a little bit more about the progress and what's been happening. Adrian, let me start with you. For people who aren't familiar kind of with how this affects musicians, how has AB 5 affected you?
Well, in a nutshell, what it does is it misclassifies us many times over as both employers and employees theoretically. It just doesn't work with our business model. Any musician could be an employer and an employee, often simultaneously, hundreds of times over per year. So we have a bunch of people that have reached out to us with personal stories of how this is affecting them. We have a colleague in our group that was hired to play in the pit orchestra of a production of West Side Story. But because of the added burden financially of AB 5, the production company had to cancel the orchestra and instead replaced it with a recording. So now West Side Story is going to be sung along with a recorded track.
The problem is that the person would generally hire these musicians just kind of on a per night basis, right? And they'd be independent contractors. But now, because it's part of what that business is, they have to turn them into employees and give them all kinds of benefits, even though they might just play the violin for one evening.
Right, because we're on the same line of work.
Right, so we've talked to another jazz musician who plays at a jazz club and contracts his backup musicians. Now, they each got paid $100 for the night, and that's what it would normally be as an independent contractor. But what's happening now is this band leader having to put everybody on payroll, pay for a payroll company, pay payroll taxes, workers' comp insurance, unemployment insurance. He told us that while each of his band mates that he's hired, these freelance musicians, made $100, he made -$2 for that gig because of all of the additional costs that didn't happen before. So it's just not sustainable for our business model.
You almost wonder if people are just kind of going underground, you know, I'll give you some money under the table, which obviously, you know, is not right.
There's a $25,000 fine that, you know, California could come after you for. We don't really want to risk that. We can't really afford that. If we misclassify our employees for one gig at a jazz club, that just doesn't seem right.
And if a restaurant hires somebody to just play the piano maybe a couple of nights a week, then maybe that's not an independent contractor if they're there every night all the time, and then maybe that creates a job loss too?
Well, what happens, you know, especially in the jazz scene in Los Angeles, say, you know, one of the most prestigious clubs in LA is the Blue Whale. It's difficult to get a spot at the Blue Whale. So you might play at the Blue Whale once a year, and there could theoretically be, you know, hundreds of people playing there. And, you know, then now the Blue Whale has to actually put all these people on payroll and their employees, and it's just it's a mess. It destroys venues that we can play at. It destroys small arts companies, and it destroys individuals.
So let's talk about what's happening now, because Senator Brian Jones has a bill to kind of amend AB 5. Lorena Gonzalez has kind of a cleanup bill. Tell me what's happening with those.
So first off, I would like to say thank you to Senator Brian Jones for introducing SB 881, the bill that exempts the music industry. He got in touch with us after he saw us on KUSI last time and said, what language should we introduce? We sent him our language. Now, we understand the realities of the politics of California. This bill is co-authored by just Republicans. So we are also simultaneously working with the unions on a bill that we can, on language that we can send to Lorena Gonzalez for a cleanup bill. Now, here's the frustrating thing. Our petition has 170,000 signatures of working California musicians. Now, in the unions, the Musicians Union of California, they only represent a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of working musicians. We're not in the union. They represent orchestra players, people who play on film scores. Lorena Gonzalez only really seems to care about what the unions want. She doesn't seem to care about what the people want. We're the people. We have signed this petition. There's 170,000 signatures on this thing. That doesn't really seem fair to us. But we're playing her game. We're trying to negotiate the language. She told me straight up in an email saying, I need union sign-off before I can introduce your language. So we're trying to get that done. If we can't get that done, we're throwing all of our weight with 170,000 people behind Senator Jones' bill, because we need this now.
So how do you move forward now? You just kind of keep doing what you're doing, try to work around what you can?
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, to Ari's point, I would also state that, you know, do the unions represent itself or do they represent their members? Because the members of these musicians' union, they don't want this bill. You know, the majority of work in California is non-union. So, you know, as Ari just said, we're looking forward to the compromise language and see what's happening with that. But we have a legislative deadline of February 21st. So we need to get going. And also, because of the work losses that have already happened just in this past 6 weeks, we need there to be a sense of urgency behind this. So we either need there to be some sort of urgency measure or retroactivity, because even best case scenario, we get our language in, or some type of musicians' language in, an exemption for musicians, it's not going to affect until January 1st of next year. And companies are closing, work is being lost.
Thank you so much for coming in. We
Thank
wish you all the
you.
best.
Thank
Thanks for
you.
making beautiful music.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Thank
Okay.
you.